For months now, global news has been following the money, revealing Chinese organized crime and money laundering in BC casinos and real estate. Last week in Ottawa, experts called for action against the international underground economy. The United Kingdom has been battling this for years. I spoke to the British Prime Minister's point person on anti-corruption earlier. Here's that conversation. Joining me now is John Penrose. He is the UK's Minister of State for Northern Ireland, as well as the Prime Minister's point person on anti-corruption. Welcome to Canada.
Thank you very much.
You've been here talking about money laundering. It's something that we've certainly had a lot of concern about in Canada recently, calls for an inquiry and more to be done. Can you tell me a little bit about the advice that you were giving at this conference about what governments can do to try to combat this problem?
Broadly speaking, the biggest answer to this is being transparent, is making it impossible, or as hard as you possibly can, for criminals to move dirty money around the globe and in the process try to make it look like it's clean, and then they can invest it in legitimate assets and places to live in, whether it's Vancouver or London or Manhattan, it doesn't matter. And so what you've got to try and do is to make sure that they can't move it without it being spotted. And that's all about just saying who controls companies. Shell companies can be used to move money around the globe, other kinds of organizations, trusts and the like as well, so that whenever they try, we can follow the money. And at that point, we can get the assets back, we can take them off them, they can hit them in the pocketbook where it hurts. And ultimately, once we've done that, we can track down the individual concerned, and we've then got the case, the court case, to put them in jail if necessary.
So can you explain to me a little bit about how you do that tracking? How do you find out who owns the companies, who's behind them? Because that's been one of the big difficulties here in Canada.
Yeah.
You see the company's name, you might suspect who's behind it, but there's not a way to find out.
And that's a problem the world over. There is an answer, but it does require lots of countries to do the same thing, which is to basically say, you have to reveal who runs the company. It isn't just enough to say there's another company behind that and another company behind that and another company behind that. You've got to say, no, who's the person, the living, breathing person with a pulse, who actually owns it, or who controls it in some way or another, manages the thing.
There is this concern in Canada because there has been increasing awareness of the money laundering that's happening here, particularly through Chinese organized crime in real estate and in casinos. Is that a reputation that's starting to reach the UK about Canada and raising concerns?
I think that some of the reports that have come out about the problems in BC are relatively recent, so it hasn't hit many people's consciousness in the UK yet. But the thing which we in the UK know about ourselves, being host to the City of London, is we are all vulnerable to reputational damage, and it doesn't take much for a country's reputation to get dented, and once the country's reputation is dented, then all the businesses and the banks and the lawyers and the accountants, everybody's reputation who seeks to do business in that country is dented too by association. So we've all got a heck of a lot to lose, the UK just as much as Canada.
Turning to Brexit, do you believe that a deal is possible by that October 31st deadline?
It's possible, but it's difficult, and it's been difficult all the way through, and it's one of these things where anybody who turns around and says, oh, it's easy, you just do X or you just do Y, I think is forgetting the fundamental truth, which is that for any negotiated agreement, you've got to have both sides coming to an agreement, and both sides have to say yes. And the difficulty is that this is something that no one's ever done before. No one's ever left the EU before, so no one quite knows how to do it well, and it's proving extremely tricky because you've got 27 countries on one side in the EU, all of whom want to achieve all sorts of other things as well. Britain wanting to leave, and it's proving extremely tricky.
One of the difficulties, of course, is the situation in Northern Ireland, and how do you deal with that? That's part of your portfolio, Northern Ireland.
Yeah.
How do you deal with negotiating a Brexit without stirring up the troubles again in Northern Ireland? Because that has been a flashpoint.
Yeah, absolutely right, and it is absolutely essential that we don't recreate some of the conditions which destroyed peace in Northern Ireland, and which in the 20-odd years since something called the Belfast Agreement, which is kind of the foundational peace agreement that brought peace back to Northern Ireland, it's vital that we don't put that at risk. So the essential thing is that the border between Northern Ireland and Southern Ireland is at the moment, it exists on a map, but you can drive across it without having to show your passport. You can take goods across it without having to worry about customs and those sorts of things. And the crucial thing must be that after we leave the EU, that border must not become a hard border. It must still be porous. It must still be something which you can drive across without having to worry.
Your Prime Minister is set to step down from her position in coming days, and there's questions about whether or not there should be an early election. Do you think that Brits should go to the poll early?
No, I don't, is the simple answer. And I think there are several reasons for that. One is very simply that I think that Brits need to see that the result of the referendum to leave the EU has been delivered. And only once that has been done, because they voted on that once, and there was a very clear answer to it, and they need to see that that's been done. Once that has been done, then we can think again about other polls, etc., etc. But until that has been done, there's a job to do, and stopping and saying, I'm terribly sorry, we're going to take 2 months off to have a general election campaign. Don't worry about Brexit, it can wait. I think people will take a pretty dim view of that, and I think they'd be right to.
Minister, thank you for stopping by to join us while you were in the capital.
Thank you very much for having me.